Recording, and I'm going to share my screen.
You ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Very nice. Okay, now the invocation, we have Virginia Sanders.
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the blessings that you have given me and my other fellow Rotarians, especially here in the Sooner Rotary Club. I ask for your guidance and protection for all of us, especially guidance for our leaders during this COVID-19 crisis. I pray for all the students and teachers that are going back to school and have gone back. I ask for your peace and grace during this time of social unrest. Help all men to love one another. I thank you for giving us the technology to meet through Zoom so we can fellowship and share our ideas. Please forgive us when we fail you. Keep us all safe until we meet again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay. I have problems getting the screen to advance. Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance, Jane Purcell.
Please join me in repeating the pledge. Salute, flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build
goodwill and better friendship?
And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Inquiring minds want to know.
Thank you, Grover.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Thank you, Grover. All right, recognition of guests today. I see Driana Adkins is with us. Welcome. Do we have any other guests with us today?
Janet's back with us.
Oh, Janet. Yes, Janet. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks, CE.
All right, do we have any happy dollars?
Okay, I'll do another one.
$1. I got to see my grandbaby again this weekend, so that makes me happy.
We got back from our trip from Georgia and traveling for a week, so we're just glad to be home safe and hopefully COVID-free.
Mary, did you fly or did you drive?
Oh no, we drove through Memphis and went to Savannah and came back through Alabama and Texas. Really interesting to see what all the different states are doing, but kind of scary in some places, but most businesses across the country have mandated masks if you go inside.
Any other happy dollars?
I've got one.
Okay.
Somebody else beat me. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Keith. So my happy dollar is, well, I've got a couple of happy dollars. One is really happy that lots of young people in my family started college this past week. So my two bonus boys and my nephew. So that was really exciting, and so happy that they're on campus and getting to have a college experience, however long it might last. And then the other one is today is a citywide election. So please get out and vote if you haven't done an absentee ballot. So it's the 4 city questions. So anyway, that you should have gotten information in the mail about. So please get out and vote.
Great. Keith, did you have a happy dollar?
I did. And I don't know if there's a way that you can bring up Scott Mullins on the screen or not. I know Scott's with us, but I contacted Scott last week, and he's doing double duty as our Postmaster General. If nobody has noticed, Scott Mullins is an exact duplicate in the face of Postmaster General LaJoy, which I'm not sure. But anyway, can you bring up Scott or not?
Stop it, stop. That's an insult to the Postmaster General.
The first time I saw the Postmaster General in his testimony and stuff, I couldn't believe that wasn't Scott. Unbelievable.
All right.
We're proud of you.
I told him, I replied back to Keith, and I told him, I said I was moonlighting. Don't tell anybody.
Has anybody else told you that, Scott, besides me?
I have never, ever heard that besides you, Keith.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, all of you Sooner Rotarians, pay attention the next time you see the Postmaster General on TV.
Okay.
Okay.
Not what he says, but what he looks like.
Let's get the plane back in the air.
I am planning to go to Galveston this weekend if the weather allows and fly my plane down. So there you go, Scott.
Nice. Oh, I forgot I have one more happy dollar. I don't know if anybody noticed my face. I've got a nice little bruise here and I have some stitches here. CE asked me about this. Last Friday I went out, I was walking my dog, and my hands kind of got twisted with the leash, and I tripped on a speed bump and my face broke my fall. So I'm not happy that I fell because it still hurts and I'm very sore, but I'm happy I didn't break my jaw because I really thought I went to the minor ER because I thought I broke my jaw, and I was just thinking my husband took me over there, and I was thinking about the idea of having my jaw wired shut and being on a liquid diet for weeks and weeks. And so I was very happy that that it's not broken. So that's my other happy dollar. Anybody else? Okay, do we have any announcements?
Just the breakfast at neighborhood jam on Thursday morning.
Okay.
So, and I invite everyone to come, including Keith.
Cliff,
Yes.
is that going to be outside?
Yes.
And then
Okay.
I thought you were remarkably brave to stand there. Don't come in here.
Are there any other announcements?
Excellent dog identification. That's amazing.
Did she know it was a Mal?
Huh?
Did she know it was a Malinois?
I thought that's what she said.
Figure out who to mute.
Michael.
Oh, Michael. All right. Well, we might as well get on to our speaker for today, Gregg Fort. We're going to have Scott Mullins is going to introduce him and tell us a little bit about how he got involved.
Well, today's speaker, as you know, is Gregg Fort, and you've probably read his bio that we sent out. And Gregg has just done a phenomenal job since he has gotten involved. Our board has really taken off, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. But the way I got involved was someone asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved with the foundation. And I really didn't know anybody who had epilepsy. We had nobody in our family that had epilepsy, and just decided to get involved. And I really started to get into it. I just felt like you could really make an impact with this foundation. You know, there's so many foundations out there that, you know, get a lot of attention, and rightly so. But I've always felt like epilepsy was something that was really kind of misunderstood. A lot of people really don't know much about it, to be quite frank. I think it's grossly underfunded, and it just does not get the attention it deserves. And so, you know, there's actually, you know, we have a lot of people in our family that have had cancer. Like all four of my grandparents died of cancer. My mother died of cancer. Father's had it. My mother's sister died of it. She had a son who died of it at 23. So you would think I would get involved with the Cancer Foundation. But the reason that I stay with the Epilepsy Foundation is because of the impact that you can make. You know, because of the fact that it just, it doesn't get the attention that it really deserves. I just feel like I can make a bigger impact here, and have been involved with it for several years, and plan to continue to do so. But you know, Gregg has made a significant difference in our local foundation here. One of the things that I do, we've kind of had to put a halt to. We have support groups for the Epilepsy Foundation, and we've got them all over the state, but we've got one here in Norman. And hopefully when we get through all of this stuff, we'll be able to resume that again. Right now we're doing one that's more more central via Zoom, but we normally would do it at Norman Regional Hospital, and we would do it the third Thursday of the month. So anyway, with that, I'll let Gregg take off and let you listen to him for a bit.
I still can't get into this mute. I still mute myself all the time. And for ones of you that weren't on yet, my wife is a college basketball coach. So keeping me muted is a pretty good thing in her world for most, you know, across the board. So, but anyway, thanks God for that. And for the introduction. Like I said, I'm Gregg Fort, and some of you were on a little bit earlier when, you know, I was answering a couple questions. But I'll give you a quick background and then talk about a couple different things. One, I was a 25-year Rotarian. So I've actually, as I was telling some folks earlier on the call, I've sat through many programs. I've been the program chair. I've done all those, you know, all those things like that, but I've never either been on Zoom with Rotary on either side, you know. So, so this is a new experience for me. But just to kind of give you a kind of a brief overview, I'm actually in my second career. I spent over 30 years in higher education. I retired as a college vice president for college advancement. I spent 20 of those years as an intercollegiate Division I intercollegiate athletics as an administrator. As I said, my wife's a college basketball coach. She's an assistant here at Drake University in Des Moines. We played the Sooners last December, and actually Sherry was bringing the team back, supposedly bringing the team back this year to Des Moines, but obviously we don't know what the schedules or anything are going to be. But I'm a native of McKinney, Texas. I'm a graduate of Austin College in Sherman, and so I'm very familiar with the area. In fact, when I was asked, I went to work for the Epilepsy Foundation. I was really looking to kind of, after leaving higher ed and where I was and spending all that time, I wanted to do something with the rest of my work career I could really have an impact. And so I was kind of like Scott. I was, you know, trying to decide. I wanted to work in a nonprofit sector. I wanted to go to a organization where I could affect people's lives or attempt or try to in a positive way. And a friend connected me with someone at the Epilepsy Foundation, and it just so happened they were looking for someone to kind of develop to create a development area here in Iowa. And that's where I obviously wanted to move, because my wife had been the head coach at Colgate University in New York, and I had been the VP there at Hartwick College. And so she wanted to get back to the Midwest. She's from Missouri. I want to get back closer to my family in Texas. And so she was the head coach at Drake's has been a longtime friend. And she said, I want you to come to work for us, because you've been to so many NCAA tournaments and we haven't been to any, and we need something to get us started. So I was looking to come to Iowa. After about 3 or 4 months, they asked me, would I consider being a regional director, and which they were putting together 3 or 4 people that would then in turn oversee several chapters. And I said, well, it's really not, I was really kind of hoping to, I wanted to do this work here, but I finally agreed, and I said, but I'd only do it if I could pick my states. And Scott's heard this, he's heard this story before, so I apologize. So I said, I'll do it, but I'll only do it if I can take Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, and West Virginia. And my boss at the time kind of looked at me like, that doesn't, why? And I said, well, I'm from Texas, and I spent a lot of time in Dallas. Oklahoma, I'm very comfortable. I went to grad school in Mississippi, a lot of people in Alabama, and then West Virginia is a new chapter. And I said, plus those states need, the people and the constituents of those states need as much help as we can give them, because those, for example, Oklahoma and Mississippi each only have one epilepsy center within the state to serve over 40,000 people. And so I was very fortunate, and they said that would be fine. And so that's how I became the regional director over Oklahoma. And then in December, we had a leadership change there, and I actually have served as the interim executive director in Oklahoma since. I feel that, we as an organization, we were really, really making great strides in Q1 and Q2, both in Oklahoma and I think overall within the country. But then COVID hit. Then COVID changed everything for everyone. And one of the things that we've said consistently is, just COVID didn't stop people who are affected with epilepsy. 1 in 26 people in the course of their lives will be affected by epilepsy, which is a number, as Scott said, it's very, it's something that no one has talked about. People who have epilepsy don't talk about it. I have, there was a doctor on my board in Florida, because I now, since that time, I now have all states east of the Mississippi, and I kept Oklahoma. I wanted, and one of my board members, who's a neurologist in Tampa, Florida, he had epilepsy and didn't tell anybody for 40 years. And he treats it. And so, that's been one of the things is to relieve the stigma. Now, we're lucky to have people like Scott on the board. And I think that the key to being able to be effective and help people within your community, with any nonprofit, is the people on the ground locally who are there every day. They are the community engagement for any nonprofit. And one of the things when Scott asked me to talk about, today, I was like, I wanted to talk a little bit about epilepsy, the Epilepsy Foundation, which I have, and we'll continue to talk a few more, but also want to be able to talk about nonprofits in general and what COVID has done to nonprofits, what COVID is doing to higher ed and has done to higher ed, having been still really close to it, obviously my wife in it and myself I still on occasion get calls about doing, some consulting or whatever within that space. But what COVID's done and how it's going to affect nonprofits and in higher ed. And so I want to make sure that, a couple of you may have heard my charge, I was always told when I talk to groups or when I talk to my bosses, everything with the 3 B's: be bright, be brief, and be gone. And so I don't intend to. There was and I touched on this too. There was a gentleman who I was in Rotary Club with back in Nacogdoches, Texas, when I was at Stephen F. Austin, and he was the watchman, and he sat in the back of the room, and he was timing every program, and you'd get close, and you could just see it was time. It was time to wrap up, whoever you were. And when I was program chair, I'd tell him, I go, when you see the guy in the back corner back there, and you see him starting to move, you don't have to worry about your watch. You'll know it's getting close to time. So I don't want to take up too much time. I also want to leave this open for questions, because I think that I always felt that was, especially someone who had either some varied experience or things that might, be able to talk about that might be interesting to others. I'm not very interesting to anybody about anything, but I will do my best. And especially in the morning, normally all my road, we were at lunch, so you were always, you're coming in at lunch. So I'm actually have more energy today, because if you call me at lunch, it's about time for my nap. So, so this morning I'll be able, hopefully, to answer a few questions. Now, the Epilepsy Foundation in Oklahoma, we have a local board, which Scott sits on. We have an office in Oklahoma City, but obviously since COVID, we have been virtual offices, not just here, but across the country. We as the Epilepsy Foundation will continue to be virtual, and even though that our staff will occasionally go into the office to do different things, we're not working out of the offices, and will not through the end of the year. So we are, even though we now have as an organization more staff that lives outside of the national office area of Landover, Maryland, that work in the national office. We are a little bit different organization than some of, like American Cancer Society or the Heart Association. There's 2 different types of local organizations within the Epilepsy Foundation. In Oklahoma, we are a chapter, and so we are part of the overall organization. In Texas, there are 2 affiliates. Well, the affiliates are their independent 501c3s that then in turn do business in that state as the Epilepsy Foundation of their area. So think of it this way: the Epilepsy Foundation, like other nonprofits, you have company stores and you have franchisees, and that's the best way I can describe it. They had to describe it to me that way. And so that's the way we operate. Well, we are a chapter organization in Oklahoma. And so, we are, there are over 43,000 people in Oklahoma that are affected by epilepsy. And that is through the CDC numbers. There are more than that, but that is the number there. And as I said, 1 in 26 people in America will be affected by epilepsy during their life. Now, COVID has, we all talk about, COVID, and we went into quarantine, and the things that we talk about today that almost seem natural about social distancing, and we talk about masks, and if we would have been talking about this in January or February, people would have just shaking, what are you talking about? Some dystopian future. Well, one of the things that it's affected is nonprofits, and the way nonprofits have been affected significantly is in revenue to continue the work with their programming. And what nonprofits have had to do, in fact, there is a nonprofit where I have a couple of good friends at work, that their entire revenue stream in order to support the organization was based on weekend face-to-face events in the spring. Nationally, they lost about $16 million a weekend. Since that time, they have had a reduction in force of about 60%. And those reduction in forces have happened across all of nonprofit. we had a reduction in force in May. Now, luckily, we were a much leaner organization nationally than a lot of organizations, and so obviously our effects have been different. We still have support on the ground in every state where we have our chapters, but the COVID has significantly impacted nonprofits. In fact, I saw a study the other day that is saying that 40% of nonprofits across the country may close in the next 18 months. Now, while that sounds really scary, I want to also let people know that that doesn't necessarily mean that the larger nonprofits you see and the ones that are helping people in those ways are going to close, are going to look different. Over the last 10 to 15 years, some of you may know there's been an explosion of 501c3 designations throughout the country. In fact, they've gone up in the last 25 years, they've gone up about 1,000%. So a lot of nonprofits were very small, could be individually funded, family funded, or all that. So there's obviously, but COVID's going to affect them significantly. It's affect all nonprofits significantly. The other thing in higher ed, and speaking of my prior life, and working in smaller select liberal arts college environment. I also worked at DePaul University, which is the 8th largest private school in the country, the largest Catholic institution. I worked at Florida International University, which is almost 45,000 students. Stephen F. Austin in Texas. I worked at Texas Tech as well. So higher ed is dramatically impacted, as you can see, is OU. My wife, just what schools are going to face in dollars in testing alone. My wife and her, the team is, they've been tested. Nikki and I came back, and from before, so right before they started, Nikki had to go in. She had to be tested. They take temperatures. My sister-in-law is an associate athletic director at Mizzou, and saying every day they're tested, pretty much weekly. You can't get in the building without a card. You can't. You have to have your temperature checked every time you come in. You have to wear masks. All of these things affecting higher ed. One of the specific things I talked about was revenue in nonprofits. Well, the same thing, revenue in higher ed. Most institutions, and I'm not talking about the big state institutions, the University ofs. I'm not talking about the Oklahomas of the world, the OUs of the world, but they make their money in not just in tuitions there, but it's room and board, especially private schools, and because tuition's discounted significantly over the course of a student's career. And so by not having students on the ground living on campus, it directly affects revenue. And then the increases in my former institution is going to project to spend $2.5 million in tests alone this year, depending on how long that they stay, what they call a hybrid, where they're partially on campus. So that is really kind of the space in which I know a little bit about. I think that, at this time, I think I wanted to kind of open it up, for questions, because I think that would be the best way for interaction. We as an organization within Oklahoma, we are right now concentrating on seizure safe first aid. CDC has approved our system for us to to provide seizure first aid training across the country. We have developed virtual trainings, which we are training. We have so far in the first 8 weeks, we've trained almost 100,000 people in seizure safe first aid through virtual means. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we virtually trained all of the school nurses in the Oklahoma City public schools. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jaretta Halsey Taylor, who is on the ground in Oklahoma City. She is our administrative coordinator for the state. She is doing great work. Her daughter was diagnosed with epilepsy at 4 years old, and Isabel is now 11. And yesterday was her 2-year seizure-free anniversary. And so Jaretta's doing great work, and she's the one that led the training, and we are going to be training more and more people in seizure safe first aid because we are able to do it virtually. And so we would offer that training to any group, whether it be, Rotary clubs and public school, school personnel, school nurses, anybody in the country that would like to understand more about seizure safe first aid. We do have in the legislature, there is a bill that would make seizure safe schools in Oklahoma. There are already 5 states in the country that have that type of legislation, and we are the organization that provides the training for that. So, and that's because we can do that virtually, and it's obviously something, as Scott said, the support groups are different because we have to do them virtually and instead of face to face. So, well, I have waxed poetic now for the last 10 minutes or so. And so I would, if anyone has any questions or if something pops up, I can pontificate about a little bit more before it's time to adjourn, I would be happy to.
Greg, what do you mean by a seizure safe school?
A seizure safe school, a lot of is to make sure that someone in the school has training to deal with students with seizures. And it's really that simple. There are, as we talk about students and that need that there may be some students who need seizure medication delivered, which the seizure medication has come significantly forward in the last few years. The pharma companies are doing amazing work in how fast they're moving forward with medication to improve the lives of people with epilepsy. Especially controlling seizures. We have several staff members at the Epilepsy Foundation who also are affected by epilepsy. Our executive director in Alabama, she young mother, had just had a child, was a PR executive in Birmingham. After her first child, she had her first seizure, and then more seizures. And it, as she said, it completely changed her life because, all of a sudden, she has a baby. She's having seizures. She now can't drive for 6 months. She's having her whole work life changes. And then we have an opportunity and she applies for the opportunity to be our executive director. She in turn is now pregnant with a second child, and now even though her seizures are controlled, she's in a whole new world. And we were very fortunate that she accepted the job and has done amazing work. In fact, she actually was helped us because I had put together a team approach within the region of helping each other with our, on the online events and things like that. And Sarah was actually very helpful in our virtual walk in May in Oklahoma. So as a seizure safe school, it's to have nurses, and personnel trained of how to help a child that's having a seizure. And then obviously in the nurses side, how if the child has medication, that how to best administer their medication. So
I'd like to ask a question.
okay.
Okay, we adopted a child at 10 and she had quite a history of seizures growing up. We did not witness any, so I'm guessing you can grow out of them, but she has since grown up and had a daughter, and her daughter is she's 5 and has experienced several seizures. And is it hereditary? They haven't said that she has epilepsy, but
I
our
cannot, if she's been having multiple seizures, that, you know, that's one of the, and I'm not a physician. I'm not anything medical. So therefore I will avoid making any, you know, that's not, you know, I can do color analyst on a football game. I can still do that. But when it comes to medical, I used to do that. That was one of the things I used to do in higher ed. But there are, some of the stories that I've heard anecdotally is you may have brother and sister, that it could run in families. There are instances, we've got board members across the country who talk about having seizures as children and have it, and they talk about, it's like I mentioned, Isabella Taylor just a few minutes ago. She's been seizure free for 2 years. And but the improvements of medication, as I said, now that's what we're here for, is the information. Our website, epilepsy.com, is the single largest repository of epilepsy information in the world. Millions of unique visitors. Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
It's epilepsy.com. And you go to epilepsy.com, and millions of visitors a year from all over the world. And so I would, and that's one of the other things that we do, is promote the increase of services and increase of medical access for people with epilepsy across the country. Dr. Sherry Heron from OU is on our board. And that was one of the things that we work with in other states, is to try and develop dollars for fellowships, which in turn will help bring additional epileptologists to the centers, and additional funding. We do that through our Care and Cure program, and that's something that Dr. Heron and I are talking about, and that to bring to Oklahoma City, to Oklahoma, to help increase the amount of physicians within the epilepsy center, something we're talking about right now. So I apologize for not, that's one of the things about making sure when we do our seizure first training is, we do have, like we did one in Florida last week, and one of our board members there, who is actually building a new epilepsy center in Lakeland, Florida, was on the presentation. So he, it's Johns Hopkins trained, Cleveland Clinic. No one could speak more intelligently than him. And so I apologize that you get the reverse of it with me. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum in that sense. So, but I would make sure, and I do not know whether they're in Oklahoma or what state they're, where they're located. But the resources get better and better, and for both the families, and the patients and the families.
Thanks.
Hey, Denise, if you ever need to talk to me about it, I've been seizure-free for 48 years on medication, so.
Okay.
Wow, congratulations.
That's big.
You can talk.
Okay.
Hey, Denise, there is, everybody probably knows Rick Harrison, who's he's the guy that you see on that reality TV show called Pawn Stars, the bald guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually is on, I think he's still on the national board, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
And just a phenomenal guy. I mean, if you want transparency, he's the guy. But he says that he has grown out of it. He had it when he was growing up, and he had bad seizures. He had, what most people think of as used to call them the grand mal seizures, but they're called tonic-clonic seizures. And if he would have one, it would be so bad that he would have to be out of school for a week. I mean, like it would like tear his muscles and all that kind of stuff. But he says that he's grown out of it. I know that your brain physiology changes a little bit as you're growing up. There's a wide spectrum of seizure disorders. I mean, there are people that are extremely high functioning, like Elton John actually has it. He just never talks about it. John Roberts, our Supreme Court Justice, he has it. But you have something called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is on the more severe spectrum, where you have to have multiple seizure types to get a diagnosis. You have to have a certain EEG reading called a slow and spike wave, and then you also have to have cognitive impairment. So you have all those three, and you're considered to have Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Well, what happens is as people get older, they a lot of times will lose that EEG reading, and so sometimes if they're going to an adult neurologist, the adult neurologist doesn't even think that they have any Lennox-Gastaut patients in their practice, when in fact, a lot of them will have maybe one, maybe two, but it does change as you get older, and I think it also depends on the severity and the frequency, but it's all over the board. But just to kind of continue to humanize it, when people do have a seizure, they can lose their license to drive. They have to, and it changes according to the state, but in Oklahoma, I believe you have to go 6 months without a seizure before you can get your license back. And so what happens is there are plenty of people that just don't even tell their doctor because they're afraid that they're going to lose their license. And you think about if you don't have your license to drive, how big a deal that is. How do you get to work? How do you get to school? Even if you don't, let's say you're retired, you just lose your independence, and it's a huge deal. I think Texas, they changed it a few years ago to where you have to only go like 3 months without a.
It's 3 months. That's correct. It's 3 months in Texas.
And so, yeah.
And I mean, Scott, I mean, thanks. And, those are, when you talk about this, and I'll tell a quick story from a board member in Iowa. So Dr. Stacy Waddell, she's a pediatrician. And one of the tragic things about epilepsy is sudden death syndrome, SUDEP. And the Isaiah Stone Foundation in Oklahoma, that's one of the that's their what they support, and their focus is on SUDEP, pediatric epilepsy. The Dr. Waddell, has a son with epilepsy. Now, she's a trained pediatrician. She had never been told by a doctor about SUDEP, sudden death syndrome, till she heard it on an NPR story driving to her clinic, and had a son at 12. And since that time, Dr. Waddell has immersed herself in that, and as a pediatrician, and is doing amazing work here in Iowa to raise awareness to that. There are one of the things that we do as the Epilepsy Foundation is we have a Shark Tank type competition to help fund different treatments or devices that might help with epilepsy. And one of those was a watch, like a smart watch, that can detect a possible seizure, and which would obviously could help with that. So there's been some of those things that's what we're doing, and trying to actually create an even larger venture fund to help with the development of new devices, new treatment, new procedures. So, but I thought that story about Dr. Waddell, a trained pediatrician who has a son with epilepsy, and there's a condition that it was never discussed with her or anything, whether in her training or anything like that. There's still a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot to go forward in it. But like I said, I do appreciate being here today. I'm obviously happy to answer any more questions as best I can. And I appreciate everything you do in the community. That was one of the things that I used to always think about, was that, that my clubs, we were doing things as a group, but it seemed like we all were doing things individually, and what an impact we had on the community. So, and once again, thank you for having me today. I'm happy to answer any more questions. Feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Scott, if you'd like to learn more about our organization locally in Oklahoma, or our organization nationally. And obviously, we hope things will get back to quote unquote new normal, and we will be able to start doing some getting back to things that we were doing face to face, which is very important for us and the organization moving forward.
You have any other questions? Greg, I was wondering, as far as the medications go, are they really expensive, kind of like the biologics for people with rheumatoid arthritis and those kind of conditions?
Well, it depends. Some of the older medication, do have generics. We do have. I will say that a lot of the pharmas do work and help with medication. One of the things about treatment, with people that are on Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, it is sometimes it's difficult. We have had a program in the past where we provided emergency medicine assistance for people that might be. I'll tell you this story that happened right after it happened in January. A mother of two calls, and she had two jobs. She had insurance with one, but she had two jobs, and she had twins, and both of them had epilepsy. And her medication, she was going to have a 30-day gap of medication, of insurance, where her insurance wasn't going to cover medication. The insurance, or her medication, was going to be more than her rent. She called. Jaretta started looking at, Jaretta knew different pharmacies, and sometimes pharmacies will have different prices, or different price points, or different programs, or whatever. Jaretta would called around, and we were able to help her that month through the foundation, help cover medication in that gap. And to me, you wonder why I work doing this as opposed to what I did before. That's a story, because that directly affected the lives of those children. So it is expensive. A lot of new medications are expensive, are significantly expensive. They come down in price as they move forward. And that's another thing. We're working with companies to try and help with that. And it's all over the board as far as expense. So.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Greg. It's been very interesting.
Well, thank y'all. Like I said, I appreciate having this opportunity. Like I said, I hadn't done this in a while. I apologize if I was long-winded, but I wanted to give y'all a quick overview of that, and also, and I think it was important. Anyone who does what I do needs to let people know in the community. This isn't just about, the COVID is not just affecting Epilepsy Foundation as an organization. In our space, it's affecting everyone, across the country. So when you look to support, I say that we used to talk about this a lot, in my prior life in higher ed. If you're gonna, like on the Giving Tuesday, when you talk about, give us something that matters to you, give to something that has affected you, your life, but give, help us be better. So thank you again for today.
Thank you very much. All right, Rotarians, we're ending just a little bit early. So everyone have a great week and go out and open the opportunities.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See everybody Thursday.
Bye-bye.